Good evening, everybody. If you're just tuning in, you are listening to the Angel Rock Live out of New Orleans, Louisiana on United Public Radio Network. I am your host, Lorilei Potvin. Just want to give you a little bit of a heads up. If you are listening to the show, please come over and watch us live. You can see us on UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. That's a secondary channel on United Public Radio Network. You can also go to UFO Paranormal Radio, the Facebook page, same name under Twitch or Twitter. Lots of different places to see us. If you've never been to the show, like I said, I'm the host. My name is Lorilei Potvin. I'm a Canadian clairvoyant medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, a spiritual teacher and mentor, and I'm also a registered nurse. Hello, Zach. I see you. We're just getting rolling. Where was I? Yes. And if you've never been to my show before, I cover all aspects of the supernatural, but I feature guests from all walks of life who, through either their extracurricular or their professional activities, they are making a positive change for humanity. Hey, Dave, nice to see you. And hi, Danny, welcome. Before I introduce my guest, I want to give a huge shout out to my very good friend, Lois T. Martin, and her co-host, Joanna Garfi McNally, and Trisha, who works the back room over on Block Talk Radio. I've got your number. I was on there tonight. Danny's joining us from that show. And tonight, I have a fellow United Public Radio Network host and my other half who has been through crazy paranormal experiences with me, the Dell. Say hi, the Dell.
Hello. How's it going?
And it's going well. And Dell has his own show here on UPRN called The Delicious Recipe. He can tell you more about that in a minute. So tonight, I was going to have a guest, and Dave and I are working on that. We're going to have one of his buddies on here to be talking about the Knights Templar and all kinds of things like that. Zach, good to see you. Zach's one of our regulars. So is Dave, too. Dave's been a guest on the show. Actually, Zach's co-hosted with me before. We love to have people here on the show with us in the chat, and we like to read your comments. If you've got questions, we like to make you part of the show. I call you part of the Angel Rocker Tribe family here. So thank you for your support. Now, if you are over on my Facebook profile, there's a good chance I may not see your comments. So that's why I suggest, if you're joining a few minutes late, to join us here over on UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials on the YouTube page, or you can find it under UPRN, I believe, but the real name is UFO Paranormal Radio on Facebook. And then we can see your comments. So Deli, tell them a little bit about your show, because it's not a cooking show.
No, it isn't. No, it's called The Delicious Recipe. It airs Thursdays at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. And basically, we just cover a whole variety of topics where you just throw a lot of information in the pot and we see how it tastes at the end. And maybe you like how it tastes at the end, maybe you don't. Or maybe you find something, an ingredient there that allows you to come up with your own recipe and go further. And it's all about doing research and finding out more about the world at large and different things through the past history, what's going on today and maybe in the future and that.
Gives you some food for thought, definitely, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
I've been on his show numerous times. We do a lot of shows together, but I thought, we haven't done a paranormal show in a while. And I was on actually Lois's show. Usually I don't get phone calls like that. I was doing readings kind of off the top of my head. Whoever called in, I don't get to see them. I just hear their voice and I just sort of give whatever I pick up from spirit. And a lot of paranormal questions came up tonight. And I was thinking about that before I actually did Lois's show. You can ask Del that. There's a YouTube channel. We look at many, many different sources, but one in particular that's quite interesting, and I tend to like to check out quite a bit on there. Del, even after everything we've been through, we're going to talk about that in a minute, is still quite the skeptic. But if you haven't seen Nuke's Top 5, what he does is I think he's from North America. He lives, I believe, in Norway, and people send him videos from all over the world of unexplained or paranormal crazy activity. And he's a bit of a skeptic, I believe myself, and he never tells you what to think. He always says, is it all an elaborate hoax? You decide. And some of the stuff we have seen on there, I was watching it today. We were watching it just before we went live tonight. There was some crazy stuff on there, right, Del?
Oh yeah, for sure. And the one that sort of really stood out that was on the recent one that he posted on YouTube was the one from Windsor, Ontario, with this native throat singer singing in the bush, beating a drum and doing. If you know what throat singing is, that's where you go wong, 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 like the
It kind of
you sort of,
sounds like didgeridoo or
yeah,
whatever.
almost like that. And
Yeah.
what was sort of interesting about this one is that a deer appeared behind him. I guess trying to figure out what the sound was, and he's beating his drum and he's doing his throat singing, and then he pans the camera over, he stops the drum, and he pans the camera over and stops and goes, look, there's a deer. And in the background, behind the deer, you see a dark figure sort of move, and it sort of
Hmm.
passes behind the deer. And if anybody's been out there hunting or been in the bush or anything like that, when you come across wild animals and they come across something, they're very skittish and they'll run away right away. And the thing was sort of interesting about this whole part of this video was the deer just stood there and kept on looking forwards towards, I can't remember what the guy's name
Yeah.
is, the throat singer guy. And these two figures moved behind the deer about 30, 40 feet behind. And then when you focus in on them, they look like something, something alien or something cryptid or whatever. They look,
Cryptid. Yeah.
it was something very weird, and like the deer didn't take any notice to these
Nope.
two figures moving around through the bush. And you got to figure the area. There's lots of leaves, lots of twigs, and stuff like that. Like you're making a lot of noise, and they popped out. If you want to check it out, you can check it out. It was on the Newt's Top Five. It's about halfway through the video, and a part that
Was
sort
it
of
from 2 weeks ago? What was the
no, it
title
was
of the
from
video?
yesterday.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and the thing that was sort of interesting about that is because I watched this other video a day or two before about a similar thing that came from a guy's dash cam as he was going through some farmland, and two similar type like figures popped out around some old farm equipment and came out across, and you see them through the dash cam, and then they just disappeared into thin air. And it was like, wow, these sort of look like, it just sort of remembers this, these look similar to the same two figures that were in this video from yesterday. And I don't know, that's the thing is though, is that with the part of technology, there's a easy way to sort of not an easy way. There's a very elaborate way that you can
There he
maybe
goes.
hoax this stuff there. But I don't know. But some things that when you're dealing with animals that are in the picture and too like that, to go and surprise an animal like that when it's I don't know, that sort of brings a sort of a really heightened
A different element.
yeah. It was interesting though, but
Well,
I
what
don't know.
I'm
What
going
did
to
you?
do is oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what did you think about it?
Uh, well, I actually thought when I first saw the video, because then I'm going to get into a little bit of our story.
Mhm.
But when I first saw the video, I thought it was like a friend or something that was in the background because it was behind the deer, but it was pretty close because he was wearing this black cloak. And then as you watch, and it looks like the camera glitches out a little bit too, which is sometimes something that can happen with that type of energy, we'll call it, or entity. And then you see two of them and they look quite curious. They're kind of like peering around, like it's not really close up, but the camera, I guess I don't know if Nuke's Top 5 did it or if the gentleman did it when he reviewed the footage, but you can see that they're kind of looking like this, and for the animal not to move, knowing animals not so well in the bush like you do, but animals have senses that we don't have. So an animal, if that was a human being, would have smelt it. Now you could have said, well, maybe it was downwind, these two individuals, but I agree. They were moving and it's picked up on the video. The animal would have spooked for sure if it was somebody human.
Hmm.
I don't think it was fake. But that's the whole thing about the paranormal, right? And I've always said it can be so isolating because it's not like something that you go up into the grocery store, you're standing in line and you start chit chatting about some crazy experiences you might have had in your home. But once one person brings up the experience, say you're in a group, you may get a few skeptics or a few people giggling, depending on who they are, but it's usually people kind of feel each other out, right? Somebody says a little bit, somebody says something else, and you realize I might be safe to say something here. And then before you know it, people start stepping up all over the place, explaining unexplained situations that they've
Mhm.
had before. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, exactly right. That's why I had that whole part that I was doing with my show, the delicious stories at gmail.com, for people to write in and to put in their stories or their experiences that they'd had, whatever it was in the bush or in the city or something like that, paranormal, cryptid, and stuff like
You're
that.
still doing it. You're still
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah, and that's
Hmm.
the thing, is that once I get enough of these stories together, then to do a show and tell these stories there's a lot of other channels that do this as well. Like we watched that one with
Hmm.
facts on how to hunt, and even with this Nukes Top 5 with people sending in things there. And I think it's just
Hmm.
it brings sort of the global community a little bit closer together when people have sort of similar experiences, and
Hmm.
that they can sort of validate that our
They're
well
not crazy.
right, and they're not making up science fiction or fantasy stories just to get views and likes and stuff like that.
Attention.
Because there's a lot of people out there that create stuff and just to try to get their
Like the
15
guy
seconds
with
of
the
fame. Yeah,
fairies. The
yeah.
guy with the fairies. We'll get into him, but building off of that, what I want to say is, okay, so years ago, and I know you know our story, Zach, Dave, we've shared some of it with you. Danny's new here, and we've got quite a few different and new listeners from around the world. So what happened probably about 15, 16 years ago, I was still married to my first husband. It was the home we were living in previously. And the interesting fact was, we know the history of the home. It was built in 1958. There was three very quick successive owners after that. And then my ex's parents bought the home. Now, he claims he never had any activity or anything. We ended up buying the home from his parents when my eldest was about 15 months old, and he's going to be 27 in July. And when we moved into that home, we had nothing but bad luck. Sometimes that happens, right? I hurt my back working, couldn't go back to work as a nurse. He never seemed to be able to get a job that he should have been able to get. He had three business designations, so on and so forth. Financial issues, you name it. Almost lost our second child. Anyways, long story short, I couldn't get up too often, but I had to keep busy. So what I would do was crafting things. I still do that, creating things. And when I could get out, this is, like I say, about 15, 16 years ago, I happened to go to a bunch of stores that day, and everywhere I went, somebody wanted to carry my merchandise, but did not want a commission in any way, shape, or form. And I couldn't believe this. So I came home, and my ex knows about this, what's going on. He was a little bit of a part of it. He signed the release with the TV, so he'll be okay with me mentioning his name. His name is Earl. And at that time, The Secret had just come out, and I'd gotten a copy of the movie, and we'd watched it the night before. And I remember coming home saying, like, what is this? Like, holy crap, like nobody wants a commission, and they're going to carry my stuff in their stores. And I remember him saying, well, maybe it's a secret. Well, we kind of laughed about it and said, well, I don't quite understand quite how it works back at that time. And who knows? Well, I had a dream that night, and that dream is like it happened 10 minutes ago. And in this dream, our old house, there was a tree in the front yard. And I was out in the front yard, and it looked like a man sitting in the tree with a very, I always say I'm not a, high maintenance kind of girl, but you could tell he had on an expensive pinstripe charcoal suit, white crisp shirt, black tie. As you looked up, further into the tree, you could see he had on this short black goatee and mustache all connected. His hair was all slicked back to here, but his skin was like this sickly white pasty color, and his eyes were going from black to like flames. And I remember him saying to me, hello, Lorilei. He said, you see that little business of yours? That's nothing. I can give you wealth. I can give you fame. I can give you anything you want. All you have to do is agree to follow me. And I remember, it's not radio friendly what I said to him in the dream, but basically told him in no uncertain terms and asked, who the heck are you? He told me he was a demon, told me his name, spelt it for me. And again, I repeated my message, only much more firmly and again, not radio friendly, but to get the heck out of there. And that's when he laughed at me and he wagged his finger at me and he went, oh, no, 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 I'm not going anywhere. He said, whenever you see a crow or a raven, you'll know who it is. And at that time, I just started taking my certified angel card reader course. I think I just finished it. So I called on Archangel Michael in the dream. There was like this flash of royal blue, silver, and white. I woke up in a sweat, crying and shaking, and I'm not a crier. And very shortly after that, all heck broke loose. My marriage broke up. It was already, it wasn't going great ever since we moved into that home. Dell and I have known each other our whole lives, and we got together. We were just friends, but we did. And he was living in the home after my ex had lived. And we had weird stuff going on, eh, Dell? Like put your keys down, or where your keys would always be, bend down to put your shoes on, stand up, your keys are gone. You're ripping the house apart thinking you're going crazy. Whatever you're planning to go out for, you cancel it because you can't find your keys. Go back to the mailbox an hour later. There's your keys, exactly where they were before you put your shoes on. But it was the night that really convinced us something was going on. Our bedroom was in the basement in the old house. It was about 11:30 at night. I think it was a Monday or Tuesday night. And we heard this horrific crash from upstairs. So we ran up the stairs. My eldest son met us in the kitchen. He was a teenager at that time and said, "What the heck is going on?" And we're looking around for this noise. And the kitchen and dining room were kind of an open concept. There was just like a half thing of cupboards, open area, and then other cupboards down to the ground. On the opposite wall in the dining room, I call it a curio cabinet. It was a little cabinet about that big, about that high, maybe weighed 3 to 5 pounds, had all my treasures from childhood in there. And we found it in the living room. And we're going, how the heck did this happen? When we looked further, it looked like it had been ripped off the wall because the hooks were still on the wall. The one hook was bent down and you could not bend it with your fingers or anything. There was a wall about 3, 4 feet to the left. We figure it must have flew to the left first. As it flew into the living room, which would have been from the wall about 18 feet, maybe, Del, am I right about that or less?
Yeah, so I took measurements of all that stuff there, and the cabinet, if because you just gave a hand signals there, it's about 3 feet by about
Yes,
18
you're right.
inches
If
high.
people are listening, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so what it had done was the cabinet had popped up and then went left 5 feet straight across, cut the phone cords, and the answering
Caller
machine.
ID, phone cords, and
Yeah,
the answering machine, like a
yeah, and
scalpel.
then it bounced from that wall and went 15 feet into the living room and was laying on the floor. So there had to be, because I went and I put that thing back on there afterwards, and I hit it with every which way I could to knock it off the wall to get it to do something similar. And because the hooks were on a swivel, so even if you bumped it, they would have swiveled and the thing wouldn't have come off.
Mm-hmm.
You had to go and lift it up like straight up, but to get it off, and then it threw that way enough to cut the cords and then bounce the other way. So there was actually quite a bit of force and direction that was put with this, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a couple little small dogs, and I think there was a couple cats there. And plus we had the recycling bins that were underneath. So you would have heard if the animals had gone in there, you would have heard them
They
smash
couldn't
into
have reached it,
they,
though. They
right.
couldn't have
They
reached
couldn't
it.
have jumped that high. Plus, you would have heard them
Mm-hmm.
landing in the recycling bins, and you would have heard all
Mm-hmm.
that noise. But all we heard was just the cabinet bouncing.
Crash.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like Del said, and we still don't know how because it was high up on the wall and it was way lower, the phone cords on the counter and
Mhm.
the answering machine and the caller ID. And it looked like somebody had taken a scalpel and just sliced right through them.
Mhm.
All my treasures in there were broken and crushed basically. The glass was broken. There's pictures of the cabinet. I don't have the cabinet anymore, but I have pictures of it. The hooks, like the openings on the back of the cabinet, were still intact.
Mhm.
And then on the wall, like I said, the hooks, and I have pictures of all this. The one hook is normal. The other one looks like it's been pulled down. You
Yeah.
couldn't, even with pliers, I think we tried it. You couldn't
Well,
bend it.
you
Like it
couldn't do
came.
it with your hand, and that was the thing. There
Mhm.
is that these were really solid hooks. They're just like regular hooks that you would hang pictures and stuff like that from, but these were like heavy duty hooks. Like they're not the
Yeah.
little cheap ones you buy from the dollar store that you can bend like a paperclip. Like these ones, you had to open them up. If you wanted to open up wider, you'd have to use 2 pairs of pliers to bend them. That's like you needed
So
something significantly, anyways.
the whole time reason why we mention this is Zach. That's how I know him, from a friend of ours, Jason Bland, who has an excellent paranormal show. If you haven't seen it, he's on YouTube, he's on Facebook under Paranormal Soup. Sunday nights, I believe it starts at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's 3 hours. You can call in, ask questions. He's got great guests. He was a real help to us. But I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. This became like a full-time job, 12 to 18 hours a day. I started locally, then I went provincially, then I went nationally, then I started going to the US, and then internationally looking for jobs, or jobs for help. Sorry, jobs, I wish. No, for help. And in the meantime, that's when I started realizing about my own gifts that I'd had my whole life and didn't realize. Danny, when we were talking on Lois's show very briefly, and just before the show, um, you had said your grandmother had these gifts and it went through your family. Well, my grandmother on my dad's side had these gifts. I always joke that I think I'm the only one that's out of the spiritual closet. My grandmother was apparently pregnant, good Canadian, French Canadian Catholic family, pregnant every year for 25 years, had 17 children. And so I have a whack of cousins, and I'm the only one, I believe, out of the closet here with the spirituality stuff. Zach, you said, I remember getting a reading from you, Lorilei, when you lived at your old house. There were shadows moving behind you. I saw a small bit of what you've experienced. It was real. There are other people that have experienced what we've experienced. And Zach is indeed very right. I used to call in to Jason's show live every week on video. You can see all kinds of stuff going on in the background. I have two particular shows where I called in. He was doing IVPs, or basically ghost boxes, you could call in. And I called from the most active part of our house. And it's a Halloween show, 2017, 2018. I dare you to listen to those. And now Dell's skeptical. He thinks that it puts in people's minds because it's edited. And he could be right that there's subtitles. So if you close your eyes, he says he doesn't think you hear what is said. There's something said in there by some voice that we have no idea what it was, none whatsoever. And people are freaking out in the video. This was not planned. It was all done live. It was filmed. We have so many pictures and video I have taken. Dell's been thrown, what was it, 15 feet across the kitchen? Want to share that story with them?
Yeah, that was a weird one there too as well. Well, we right. Well, the whole part of a lot of activity that took place there in the house was between the kitchen and the dining room area, and directly below it into the basement. Because I set up cameras in the house. They had security cameras, and they were all working well for a while. Then all of a sudden, something happened that the hard drive would not record anymore, but you could still view on
no matter
there.
what.
Yeah, but we had other things. Whenever there was an event or something that would happen, all of our batteries in our cars and the van would all be dead. And then we had a problem with tires being deflated and stuff like that. That's why you always said we had like a little trickster, like this guy. This guy's good. Hey, you's a good guy, but
I made him. He's not bad. I put good juju in him.
Yeah, but
tell him about what happened when you that in the fridge, and then my doppelganger. We're going to go over because that came over up in Nuke's Top 5 today.
Yeah, well, that one was I'd gone upstairs to the kitchen, and right on the kitchen's sort of like a U shape, like with the cabinets that go around with the fridge and stove, and I'd opened up the fridge and I was grabbing stuff out to make a sandwich, and the last part I was like, oh, I didn't grab the mustard out, and there was nothing on the rest of the counters. Counters were all clear except for the stuff that I put on there, so I'd opened up the fridge again, and I looked on the shelves, and I'd taken a knee to go down to the bottom shelf to thinking the mustard was down there. And just as I'd taken a knee, all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm on the other side of the kitchen on my butt, looking at the open fridge there. I'm like, what just happened here? Like, did I get like shocked or something like that? But the fridge light, like there was no surge boost or nothing. The light was still on and that. And as I'm getting up, I'm sort of like a little bit in a daze. I get up and I turn around as I'm grabbing the counter, and there's the mustard on the counter right behind me. And I was like, okay, this is weird. So I grabbed like my voltmeter and stuff like that, and I pulled out and checked the to see if there was anything that was going on, see if there was any burning in the plug, like if we got in a surge or anything. Nothing else was wrong with the house, but that was yeah, that was weird. And then I got hit in the kitchen as well beforehand. I think you were in the bathroom and
No, I was in the bed. I was in our bedroom downstairs, and you were going upstairs to grab something to eat. Next thing, you come downstairs, flying down the stairs. You go, "Did you just come upstairs and hit me twice across the shoulder really hard?" And I go, "No, why would I hit you? I've never hit anybody. Plus, you have
no,
like
it was only just
hearing."
it was like a one hit, and
Oh, okay.
it was like somebody had like thrown a big huge bean bag or something like that, hit me in the shoulder, and I just had opened up the cupboard door, and my head went forward. I'd almost like
Yeah.
smashed my head into the shelf, and I was like this, and then I seen somebody turn down the hallway. That's why I ran to the bathroom, thinking you were in the bathroom. That like
You
something was.
said you thought it was me. It
Yeah,
looked like me from the back. So
yeah.
speaking of doppelgangers, hi, Inner Peace Healing, or Shady D, as she's sometimes known. Nice to have you here. So those are just a few things. I'm writing a book about it, but I'm going to share too that some of our story is featured on Paranormal Survivor Season 4, Episode 9, called Demonic Hauntings. They did film us for 6 hours. One thing I've never shared on the show before, that when Del and I went in, there's super nice people that owned the house. It was down in Southern Ontario. We went down for the filming. But when we were in there, I said to Del, I think there's a spirit here, because you would walk into a certain part of the kitchen and it would feel cold. And then you had to call the guy because they had every kind of device to watch streaming TV, right? And the
Yeah.
owner, didn't he say something about his grandfather?
Yeah, he did. I think that was his. He said that was his grandfather's house, and
Mm-hmm.
he'd had all that, and he said he had experiences that he'd seen his grandfather who had long been passed away in there, and he added as a what are those things they're called? Not free. Bed. What are those called? Not free.
Airbnb.
Airbnbs, and other people that had stayed at the Airbnb had certain weird events sort of happen to them. Nothing that sort of was did anything physically to them, but something that they had noticed a figure there in the area or in the backyard and in throughout the house.
He had
And
had a falling out with his grandfather before he passed, he said, because I remember we put out a drink for his grandfather, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, but the devices in there, he said that every time that he put in like a Roku TV or Apple TV or something like that, and he'd leave, all the passwords would be reset or changed, and he'd have to phone in, do all that stuff. So, but yeah, he said the house had some sort of something going on in there that he couldn't explain either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I just knew when you walked into the kitchen, because it got cold all of a sudden. It got really, really, really cold. And it was just in a certain spot. We didn't have any experiences really there. And we didn't have really any problems. And it was nice because we got to meet the owner, because I believe they did most of the filming for that season at for Paranormal Survivor in that home. Didn't he say that, Del? They had used his home?
They used it a few times, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we had many, many, many more experiences. For example, one of my oldest son's friends didn't believe in the paranormal. And my son was going out with his two buddies, and one of them was sort of standing back. He loved our dog at the time, Shiloh, our first German Shepherd we had. And he was sitting there, and I was chit-chatting with my son and his other friend at the front door when all of a sudden we heard, "Holy F." And we turn around and his friend is like completely white. And we said, "What's going on?" And he goes, he could barely talk. Speaking of dogs, my German Shepherd, our German Shepherd usually makes this is our second one, Emmy. So she's trying to hop up on camera. She usually does that. Anyways, he goes, I thought it was a dog. He goes, I was standing here and he said, I turned to see if it was a dog. He goes, something just grabbed me around my ankle and he was white. That kid was never back at our house again. Like I said, like Zach's had a few things happen. If you check out Jason's channel, you can see all kinds of stuff happen in the background. Because like I said, I used to call in because I was trying to figure out what was going on. But as I mentioned, and Danny, you heard this on Lois's show, I've Got Your Number. I always say I wouldn't wish this on a blade of grass, but I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing today had we not had that experience. I don't think I've ever asked you this, Del. What's your thoughts about it? Do you look back at it with anger or fascination, interest?
Well, yeah, with interest and stuff like I remember the one when I set up the cameras. I had two cameras out the front of the house, and I had one down in the basement where we'd had that was pointed right underneath the area from upstairs, and we had caught on camera or watched on camera one day in the afternoon, and I went out and I tried this 100 ways from Sunday to reenact it by throwing big huge lights outside to see if there was reflections and stuff like that. Just because I had a big 42-inch TV beside our other 42-inch TV, and one had the four cameras on it. And I was watching TV, all of a sudden, out of camera two, all of a sudden this big huge light starts appearing right by the workbench, and it just sort of gets bigger, bigger, gets up to about 3 feet in diameter, and it slowly goes right across the floor over to where you used to go and do all your radio stuff over there by the furnace, and it just disappears and goes out. And then I bought a heat gun, and because I had a whole bunch of stuff, and I went there and went across the floor, and the floor temperature had changed like about 10 degrees Celsius in between. So that's about 10 is what double that 30, whatever that works out to be in whatever in Fahrenheit. But the temperature had changed between the floor to where this heat or light source had gone. Like something had sort of appeared there and caused the cold concrete basement floor to heat up in that area where it moved across. And then the other part I thought was weird because there's both the time they were both there, we were watching TV, and it was late at night, and something appeared because the way the one camera went out, it was sort of like a T section of road that sort of went around this sort of cul-de-sac where we were. We were right by this T section, and there's a big street light that was there. And all of a sudden, we're watching TV, and I, out of the corner of my eye, I see, boom, this big, huge dog. It looks like it was a dog. It looked like a huge, huge wolf. And I go, he says, what is that? Because we used to have deer walk down our road all the time and stuff like that. And a lot of people walking their dogs and that. And so familiar with dogs and German Shepherds. We have a German Shepherd. And this thing walked right from the sort of the T intersection, right across the grass, right in front of our car. We had a four-door sedan Buick Century. And if you, it's a 2003, I think, whatever. So the length of the car is big enough. This thing walked right across the grass, right beside the car, and where its butt was at the front hood, and its nose was at the back of the door. So that's going almost about 8-9 feet around there, length, and like its shoulder height was above the part of the door where the window is. And because I brought the dog out there to go and put a comparison to what a German Shepherd would be compared to this thing. And this thing was like 3 times the size. And it just walked across, and as it crossed the back of the car, it just disappeared. And it was like, what was that? And it was like, because I went running upstairs, and while you were still down there, and it was like, okay, like this thing's going to be, at least I'd be able to come out and see it with my eyes to see if it was really there. And I was sort of wondering about if there's sort of bleed through with cameras and hard drives or something like that. But I'm going, well, what would ever have been that big that would have bled through and walked like that? And like,
because I have a similar experience. So I was talking to a friend in California. It was this Saturday, girls talk, and I just colored my hair. And I remember her saying, "Oh my God, I love the color of your hair." And I said, "Oh, I can't remember what the name of the color is. I'm going to go to the garbage. It's like right outside the front door." So I go out the front door, and as I go, and this is before what happened to Dell, and when we were watching TV with this black, we'll call it wolf-like thing. I'm standing there, and from across the street, it was maybe about 10, 12 feet, I see this massive, massive, massive glowing white, silver like looking wolf thing. It is huge, and it's just slowly walking. It was about the size of what you've described, Dell, I would say even bigger. And as it's walking, it turns and it looks at me, and it's got these glowing blue, like ice blue eyes, and I'm mesmerized. And my friend I'm talking to, because we're on video, I've got the camera out and I'm going, can you see this? Can you see this? And she's yelling at me, go back inside. Go back inside right now. Go back inside. I said, can you see it? No, but you need to go back inside. And I'm going, no, wait, I'm watching it. So as it walks across the other part of the road, and there's a telephone pole. As it goes past the telephone pole, disappears, and she's yelling at me, get inside. So I go inside and I go, what was the problem? It wasn't going to hurt me. She goes, you didn't hear the growling? And I said, no, there was no growling. She goes, that's all I could hear. But the part that freaked me out was my eldest kid was in his bedroom, had no idea what was going on. And he yells from the bedroom as I come in, Mom, what the heck was going on out there? I go, why? And he says, there's all kinds of growling going on. So I don't hear this growling. Somebody I'm talking to hears the growling, and my kid, who has no part of this, hears the growling. So I don't know what the heck these things were. We saw all kinds of stuff on that camera, all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of stuff. Um, the reason why you put that camera in the most active part was because Dell's still a skeptic to this day. He's got to debunk it 6 ways to Sunday. It's not that I'm gullible. My belief is just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean it didn't happen. I keep an open mind because and I'm not saying you're closed-minded. You're just more skeptical, because I believe that the truth will reveal itself. I do. I really, really do. So we've had all kinds of stuff, but I had this coin, and when I was a little girl, I always loved the poem Footprints in the Sand. And one day I was having a pretty bad day, and I was sitting on a chair in the most active part of the room. That's also where all my craft stuff was, and I did radio stuff. And I don't know why, but I got up, and I had a bunch of stuff in the craft room part that I had sort of just taken out of the room where our bedroom was, used to be my craft room. And I don't know why I got up, and I went through one bin. First bin I went through, I find this coin. Where the heck did this come from? And I look at it. It's got footprints in the sand on this coin. So I don't tell Dell, but we had a water heater, and I put it on the water heater by his workbench. And I think you were coming out of our bedroom, and I was bent down in the doorway of the most active part of the room. I was petting the dog, and all of a sudden something comes flying and goes right through my hair, right past my ear, and lands between the two of us. It was the coin, right? That's
Yeah.
when you put the camera up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's when I put the one up in the, because that was the whole part of the house, that whole section up and down
Yep.
where the living room, dining room area, and it was the basement area right below that. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I had the camera pointing down that direction. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
that's where I caught the part of you doing the weird dance down there.
Yeah, well, now we got to tell them about that. It's in the Paranormal Survivor episode. We had no control over what they did or what they put in there, and we understand it was edited for time, but it didn't quite happen the way they showed it. But what did happen was, with the cameras, I hadn't slept in about 5 days because one of us had to stay awake during the night while the other one slept, because Dell almost died. And that's the end. At the end of our episode, it did happen that way. And so apparently I was sitting on a chair in there, and all I remember is Dell coming in, and he's like yelling at me. And I'm like, I've never been that angry in my life. I'm going, don't you talk to me that way. And he's just going, come on, Laura, you got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. And so the minute I left the room, I wasn't angry anymore. I'm going, why was I so angry? And then that's when you told me that, what was that, the third time you tried to get me to leave the
Yep.
room?
Yep.
You,
Yeah, well, you kept on getting up and pointing and yelling at something. That was the thing. And the way they sort of made it in the show was made it look like you were doing some sort of
A
really spooky
ballerina dance.
hippie dance, but no, you kept on getting up and you kept on yelling. And because I had the camera in the room that's pointing that way, I would see, because I'm watching TV, and then all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye, I see you getting up and you're pointing at something and you're yelling at it. And then you would sit back down again. And like, then that happened. And I go, hey, are you okay? And then like, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So we'll go back in. And then like
No,
5
you
minutes
make me
later,
sound possessed. I wasn't possessed, but I was
well,
half
but you're like,
asleep.
oh, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then the second time is like, is it same thing again? I'm going, hey, I says, maybe you should go lie down or something like that. Hey, get out of here. And they're like, leave me alone. I'm fine, whatever, doing this. I says, okay, well, whatever. Then the third time you're like yelling and stuff like that. I'm going, hey, come on. And I'm trying to pull you out there. And then you're really getting angry and
I was
upset.
mad. I was
And like
mad.
this, I says, get out of this area here, because it's right in the whole vicinity where everything was sort of happening above and below there in the house. So, and then that was sort of weird, and that's where
Well, I wasn't possessed or anything, but when it came out, that's the only time something like that happened. But what happened was Del went to sleep and I'm laying down beside him. And this is why one of us had to stay awake at night after this. And I'm laying there thinking, what the heck just happened? Like, why don't I remember this? Like, all of a sudden, Dell's laying beside me, and being a nurse, I know what a seizure's like. It's like he's seizuring. He's like just shaking all over, and he's on his side away from me, and I'm hitting him, going, Dell, are you okay? And it was your voice, but it didn't sound like it sounded like you, but it wasn't you. Because I said, are you okay? And you said, yeah, I'm okay. I'm all right. And I went, oh, no, you're not. And even with my back, I jumped over top of him. I remember picking him up and I'm shaking him because I'm thinking, God, I don't have my phone with me. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm going through all these things as a nurse, so I need to call an ambulance. And all of a sudden, you said you remember waking up, and would you say you felt like your ribs were breaking? And then you can tell the rest.
Yeah. It just felt like somebody was giving me a bear hug and crushing my ribs. And then I just started coughing, and all this black stuff started coming
Black stuff started coming out of him.
my nose, out of coughing it up, and then started puking up all this black, like snotty slime stuff. It was like, it was almost like not like Ghostbusters, but it was
really like
weird.
Ectoplasm. It was like black. I almost took a picture of it.
This is almost like shortly after this whole incident of you in the
It's the same night.
The same thing. And it was just weird. And I just remember, holy jumping! I couldn't breathe, and just felt like like all my ribs were being crushed. And that was so I don't know. That was sort of weird. But there was other little small things, like you said there before, of things going missing. Like you could go and grab your keys to get ready to go and leave, and you put them in your pocket. You go up, you put your shoes on, you walk out the door, and your keys are no longer in your pocket.
Are gone.
And then you go back, and they're in the freezer upstairs.
You've had that happen, yeah.
Or they're or they're in the washing machine. You never went to that room. It was just weird. Like things you put something down right there, and you go to grab it 10 seconds later, and it's gone, and it's put in another part of the house. And it was just weird. We had found stuff hidden underneath the cat beds and stuff like that, like things that they would never have taken, things that they would never been able to, unless they had hands. But
no, but Danny, who's joining us, I wanted to read. Danny, I'm going to read your comment, but I'm going to read Dave's first. Dave's an astrologist, and he's also a biologist. He's been on the show before, very knowledgeable. Del's had him on the show quite a few times. He said, quantum perception, the environment is different for different people observing. True. Danny, who's been going through some paranormal activity at the restaurant he has in Wyoming, he called into, for anybody that's just joining us, I was on my good friend's show, Lois T. Martin. I've got your number on Blog Talk Radio earlier this evening doing some readings. And when we're talking about things that Del just mentioned about the keys, Danny says literally happens at the restaurant all the time. Now, some of the questions I can definitely empathize with you, Danny. We've been through it. That's something very common with people experiencing paranormal activity in the beginning, especially. The one thing I do want to say is that I would consider myself, I guess the buzzword, a light worker. I do know that most people that are in the light worker field, at least that I've encountered or researched, usually don't deal with paranormal activity. Like Estelle's just hopping off for a second there. Um, don't deal with a lot of evil, if you will. And I often wonder because the more I didn't want to work with evil or darkness, the more I would get people contacting me, asking me for help. And then with my Akashic Records mentor, I actually seen somebody that was literally possessed. It literally was not them. They were levitating on camera. And when I looked into that face, I don't ever want to look into that kind of evil ever again with my eye. And this sounds crazy, this stuff. I know most of you that are here won't think it's crazy that I can see in the chat anyways, because you've experienced some of this stuff on your own. But they were hurting their child, not a child, he was, I'd say, late teens, and their pets just by looking at them and the absolute sheer delight on their face of this. And this person wouldn't hurt a fly if it wasn't them. And I ended up contacting my Akashic Records practitioner because this person and I had known each other for quite a few years. We were acquaintances, and asked, like, what the heck is going on here? Like, the more that I don't want to work with this or be around this, the more I seem to have people and things like this happening. So she went into my records. She cleared any karma or any past agreements or anything I may have had in past lifetimes with this particular individual. Um, it worked. We never had an argument, never had a fight, nothing. Still like each other very much, but it's just that it's like things just gently drifted apart, if you will. But she said that sometimes people that work in this field, and you may feel this yourself listening to this, that even though you may work with the light, you may work with angels, you may work with, only all love and light and positivity, sometimes we need that kind of light to be shined in areas of darkness when we're dealing with the paranormal. The other thing is the paranormal is not always something negative or something demonic or something, poltergeist or what have you. And I always use the analogy of, and we see this sometimes, people that pass away very quickly or very quickly tragically, or, God forbid somebody murders somebody and they don't realize they passed. They still believe that they're alive, but they're everywhere they go. People don't seem to interact with them. People don't talk to them. They don't realize what's happened, that they may have passed. And, then they find somebody that can hear them or see them or whatever it is, right? Then maybe they might like use and be able to communicate through a medium. But I've seen instances of, and I'll use ourselves, for example, say we don't realize we've passed away. And so we go back to our regular home, we carry on with a regular day, and all of a sudden these strangers move into your home. They can't hear you, they can't see you, you can't use the telephone to call the police to get them removed. What are you going to do to try to get these people out of your house? And then they start renovating, they start ripping your house apart, they start removing your stuff, they start doing all this stuff. What would you do to make people that you believe are strangers in your own home, you want them to leave? That's just one analogy. When you left, I don't know if you heard it, but I said not everything is negative,
Mm-hmm.
or demonic in paranormal activity. A lot of times our loved ones come back and will protect us if we do have things around us. Um, I've never really ever gotten the answer as to why some people have paranormal activity and some people don't. Sometimes we mess with things, meaning the global we, when we shouldn't. And I'm going to give one more analogy and then give Della a chance to speak here. But the way I use this is that, say somebody's heard that a chainsaw is fantastic to cut down a chain link fence. They somehow find out that they can go buy a chainsaw at the hardware store. They go pick one up. They don't ask for any help. They bring it home and they figure out how to get it working. So they take their brand new, spanking new chainsaw. They go up to the chain link fence. They go to cut it, and the damn thing kicks back and cuts their arm off, and you're shocked all as heck. Is the chainsaw bad? Is the chainsaw evil? No. But it's a tool, right? you need to know how to use the tool. You should have somebody show you how to use it. You should be educated on the dangers of it and what have you. Aftercare, it's the same thing when dabbling in the paranormal, right? It's with anything. We should have either somebody that's experienced show us how to do it, or do enough research or talk to enough people, but you should learn about it, not just jump right in and try something without, educating yourself. Go ahead, Dolly. I know you were going to say something.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't use a chainsaw to cut down
I'm
metal.
using it. It's ridiculous. That's my
Right.
whole point of it. You would not use a chainsaw to cut down a chain link fence.
Right.
That's why I use the analogy. It's ridiculous. But
Yeah,
if
well,
you
that's
were educated on the situation,
just for people out there to know, don't ever use a chainsaw to cut
I'm
metal.
sure most
Okay.
people know don't use a chainsaw to cut down a chain link fence. But you're right. I guess I should have said, don't try this at home, folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
No, it's the thing about using proper tools for proper things. And we were
Hmm.
talking about this earlier. We were watching some of these videos with because there's like hundreds of thousands of people that have uh, these YouTube channels and TikTok posts and that where they go
Hmm.
out and they go out to these paranormal places and they go to these haunted places, and there seems to be quite a few of them all around the world, of all these abandoned buildings that these
Hmm.
paranormal groups go to or individuals go to. Not just the ones that are experiencing stuff in their homes, but they go out there. They're like the paranormal investigator type sort of people. And this is the comment that I had because a lot of them, over
I know
about
what you're going to
90,
say.
95%, I would say, it could be more, it could be a little bit less than that, but it's a huge majority of them. They go in there with uh, ununderstanding of what they're getting into. They don't have the proper
True.
equipment that they should have with them. And a lot of them is that when they go in there and they encounter something, they run the opposite direction instead of running
Yes.
towards the thing that's
Okay, so
there.
tell them what you do, Del. You always say Del's got a whole plan of action, but go ahead. I'm not making fun of you. You are right. Go ahead.
No, but it's as if you're going into investigate something, and all of a sudden, like I think it was one of the videos that was on this the latest News Top 10 or Top 5, whatever, and it was two. I'm not sure if they're Japanese or Chinese investigators over in Asia, and they'd gone
Hmm.
into I think it was a abandoned hospital, and they'd gone in there and they have all their equipment. They got their night vision camera. They got this, but they have no personal protective equipment at all, right? They don't have any
Yep.
mace. They don't have a stun gun. They don't have a bat with them or anything like that, or like something they can throw a net over or anything like that. And they go in there and this one, I'm not sure if this was real or not, or if it was a setup. But as soon as they saw this woman in white with long hair, it almost looked like that one from the Ring movie, and with no arms on it, just standing there. They just started screaming like like
Little girls.
yeah, you can say that, or and they ran away and they just booted it right out of there. But they were like 10 feet away from this thing. The two guys against this thing, they could have just jumped it, right? They
Well,
keep the
they
camera
probably
on.
know it's not physical.
Well, they don't know, but that's the thing, though. That's why a lot of these things I think might be sort of set up, and I think just to get views in that. That's what I say. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, and that's the part. And I think it does a disservice for the rest of legitimate people that go out to and sort of investigate stuff. And so it's like have all the equipment. Like, oh, we don't have night vision here, or we don't have FLIR here. Like, well, why are you going in there if you don't have the stuff? Like, why are you going in at 3 o'clock when it's all pitch black and you don't have the proper equipment, like a flash? It always sort of just makes me wonder, and it makes me question it more. Or
Well,
when there's
not
a
everybody thinks like you do, because we got some great comments here. I want to make some
well,
comments on.
one
So
other
hang on,
part there,
guys.
is when the camera is perfectly framed for all the events
Oh,
that
this
happen
is
in the
one.
room.
Yes.
That drives me nuts.
Hmm.
That does it.
That is suspect. I will give you that. But um, and Danny said that they were Japanese. He said that's why Nuke didn't have the source, the ones that you're talking about. Okay, so speaking of that, what you're talking about, I was a little surprised by this one. Now, this was Japanese too. Danny, you've probably seen this. It was from a couple months ago. I watched it today on Noop's Top 5. And it was this gentleman in Japan. I understand the privacy laws in Japan. Everybody's face has to be blocked out on a video. So his face was blocked out. He's given his name. I believe he has a YouTube channel. I think he had a TikTok. I'm not sure. Anyways, he was looking for a place to rent, and this beautiful home was for rent, but very cheap. So word to the wise, folks, if you find something that's too good to be true to rent and it's cheap, especially, ask why or do your research and homework. Because he signed on the dotted line, he signed a lease, and it never seems to, well, some people starts right away. It took him about 3 or 4 months, and he started filming some of the little weird things, like the lights going on without him being there, or hearing knocking, or the doors were opening. And in Japan, he had those sliding doors, not the ones that open like we do in North America here. And then he filmed this. There was screaming and moaning, sounded like somebody in absolute agony, a male voice. Then the next time we see the film of this, and he had gotten a FLIR camera by then, the ones that show the heat seeking, the different temperature changes. If there's, like, say, a body or something, you're going to see the outline. And I didn't understand what he did at first till the replay happened, because you just see all this water coming from somewhere, because you hear this screaming, like it is just screaming. And he opens up his window. When they do the replay, the guy that lived in the house had a hot element beside him with a boiling pot of water. I guess the screaming must have happened at the same time every night. I don't know. Well, he took a pot of boiling water, flung it out the window at the screaming, and he's got his heat-seeking camera, his FLIR camera going at the same time. So I'm watching the FLIR, like looking, okay, where's this body? Like, what's going to show up? All you see is the hot water, and the screaming goes to like if somebody had thrown hot water on a human being, like screaming at the top of their lungs, and stops. So this guy, I guess what happened was he stopped filming with so much frequency, because he did have a YouTube channel, because people have figured out from his videos where he lived in Japan and were showing up at his house hoping to have a performance, I guess, by the ghost. Like, how creepy is that? Like, who does that? They didn't show up at people's houses and do that, but that was weird because nothing showed up. Then I've seen a couple videos today, which have been interesting, because when you were talking about protecting yourself, how are you going to protect yourself from this? It won't set off a motion detector. There was one, we watched it together, didn't we, with the gentleman in the office on the cameras? Did you see that one with me? Maybe you didn't. I watched it on my own. And he didn't really believe in ghosts, except that he's from somewhere in the southern US, and he believes everything's demonic if there's paranormal activity. So a family member contacted him. They were having problems at an office building. So he's filming, and he's filming away, and he goes, well, I guess nothing's going to happen. It usually happens around this time, between 9:30 and about 10:15 at night. And as he's filming, he doesn't notice this creepy, I'm getting ghost goosebumps, long hair. It looked human, but really pasty face. I don't know if it was a guy or a girl, had long hair. And he didn't notice anything. And he goes, well, I guess I'm going to leave. I guess I'll come back maybe tomorrow. Maybe something will happen. And the door slams behind him. So he doesn't get too freaked out because he doesn't see the face behind him until he reviews the footage. So he goes back the next night. Now, this scared the living crap out of me. He's in there. And of course, Nuke always warns you. Danny will attest to this, I'm sure, and Dell. And he returned to the building. And as suspected, things did not go so well. Well, he's in there and he starts getting some doors opening and closing. I think what happens before that, though, he's in the security room, and you can see all of the cameras. There's one room, and there's a green light if there's motion detected. There is this creepy little thing he saw behind him, moving around in the dark, moving all over, no motion detected. So he goes into the room to find out what the heck this thing is, and it is the loudest, most creepiest, demonic sounding voice I have ever heard. I thought it was like roaring at him like a wild animal, but when you hear the replay, it was telling him to leave. What was that? I don't know. That was creepy. I want to read some of these comments. Did you want to make a comment on that first, Al?
No, I had another one there that we had watched, but you read the comments there anyway.
Well, go ahead, mention it, and then we'll read the comments. We got time to read
Okay,
the comments.
there was
Want to
one
read
we
people's
watched.
comments.
There was one we watched there. I think it was around fall of last year, and it was about. I think he was over in Europe, and he was inspecting old abandoned farms, and he'd set up static cameras all around the place, and he had his one on his chest, and he had a one handheld, and he's going around this part of this barn, and he's hearing rustling going on. He's like, "What's this?" Like it's an old abandoned farm, and as he's going around the side, there's the doorway, and as he's pointing at the doorway, all of a sudden this creature starts coming out, and that just scared the living bejesus out of me. And all of a sudden, the creature as it comes into full frame, it's the head of a cow. There was a cow that was inside the barn.
I remember that. Yeah, Dell's so skeptic about everything, and then it was a cow. Actually, it was really creepy and scary. It was.
Yeah.
It was. I don't know if you're a troll or not, Mr. John Poe, and you're welcome to stay, but there's no Paul Price here. He's looking for Paul Price. So you're in the wrong place if you are, but you're welcome to stay. Okay, so we had some interesting comments here. We had Marcus Rodriguez. He says, in India, where there is spirituality, well, there's spirituality all over, but I get what you're saying, Marcus. There is always light. We have become rascals when these forces are seen, and we are materialistic people. We believe less in spirituality and more of the ugly and dirty mind. Well, I guess that depends on where you live, because I think I have to agree with you that I believe that we are becoming very materialistic, but it's almost a different show for a different night to talk about that, because Dell and I do talk about those kind of things, don't we, Dell? Not so much
Yep.
about the ugliness and the dirty mind, but lack of what we could possibly be focusing on or looking at or what have you. But I appreciate your comment. Thank you. And Ian, hey Ian, I haven't seen you in forever. I believe this is the Ian that is from our city, actually. And Ian, let me tell you, if this is Ian I'm talking about, holy crap. And Ian, I won't say anything. If you want to comment, you can, but some of the videos Ian has sent me have blown my mind. Let's put it that way. And if he feels like sharing here, he usually doesn't keep it silent. But if he wants to tell you guys, he can tell you about it, and I'll be happy to read his comments. But I still have no explanation for some of the things I have witnessed on video. And I know Ian, it's not like he said this to me out of the blue. Don't know him from a hole in the ground. I've known him for a couple years now. And he's definitely experiencing some activity, because he says, I totally agree. It can be very creepy when not knowing what's going on or why it is. Now, the other thing is we have Michelle DeRoche with Amelia Pisano on Wednesday and Thursday nights here with their own show. And Michelle she was actually one of the Intuitives paranormal investigators who commented on our episode. We didn't know her at the time. We do now. And she's got quite the story. She was on here a couple of weeks ago talking about paranormal activity. And it's interesting that you mentioned India, Marcus, because I also find this, that depending on where you are in the world, there's really strange, unusual activity. So is it more of a tulpa, like beliefs in the areas like Japan? Like we watched a video tonight, a little boy, how old was he? Maybe 3, wading through the water on Nuke's Top 5. And all of a sudden, this little guy gets out of the water because you see this creepy little hand come up out of from the cement. Now, Dell, of course, being the skeptic, what did you say you thought it might have been?
It could have been the tail of a fish, or it could have been something.
I don't
Anyway,
think so.
yeah. Well, you don't know, right? Because you don't get to see anything else around the corner, right? So that's the part about it. And I guess the mother that was filming her kid walking across there, she didn't notice it either. So otherwise, she just sat there and watched her son there walk back from the edge. It's like, I think he was more
was pretty little.
Yeah.
Like he saw something, because
Yeah.
I think children can see the paranormal just like animals can. And I think it's because they live in the now. Their work is play. I mean, don't get me wrong. Certain animals work, like dogs like to work and do different types of jobs and what have you. But I always say, trust your kids and trust your animals. If they are looking at something or barking at something and there's nothing there, I'm not saying jump out of your skin, but I would start paying attention. Now, Zach Man says, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because I just read in Zach's their part there too, and yes, a lot of stuff is fake, but a lot of the stuff that deals with kids, and especially young kids that are even in North America videos that are caught on a closed circuit TV or nanny cams that are in there, and you'll have at late at night you'll have a toddler in its crib, and it'll be down, and all of a sudden you'll see something move in the background, and the kid will get up and will follow it around the room with his head, right? And then you'll, I don't know, I'm not sure how that one goes there, because you're faking a kid in the middle of the night with a shadow or with a white smoke or something
Or
like that.
baby cams. I have
Yeah.
seen lots. Now, the creepiest video I have ever seen, it's a little girl. She looks like she's about 18, 20 months old, named Emma, and she's in a toddler bed. And you see her, and she's leaning over the toddler bed, and she's looking underneath, and you can just hear a little bit of like babble, like
Mm-hmm.
from her. And she gets out of the bed, and she gets down on her tummy, and she gets close to the bed, and she's looking under, and something grabs her and pulls her under the bed. Now you see the mom in the next video, because she's screaming for her mom, and her mom comes and takes her out, but her mom shows there wasn't enough room for anything to get under that bed or be under there. So what the heck pulled that baby under the bed?
Mm-hmm. Hey, even that other one that we watched there today before the show, because we were talking about doppelgangers, was the one that was on the camera in the home, and I think it was the aunt is babysitting her nephew, and this is like during the daytime, and so you can see the nephew come out of the room because something is, and he's staring back at the door like, what's this? And he walks into the sort of into the middle of the living room, and you see this head come out of the bedroom and fall behind the couch. And so the kid comes walking back, and he's sort of looking, and you see this another kid that's there that looks similar to the one that the nephew that's there walk back into the bedroom, and then the kid follows it and hesitantly walks back into the bedroom.
And he's a little guy. He looks like
probably
he's
like
about maybe
4 feet tall, or three.
No, he's
Well,
smaller than that.
well, whatever. But the head comes up to about the door handle, I guess. Whatever. But yeah, about 3 or 4 years old. And that's sort of a weird one there, because those are the ones sort of that make me sort of think about them a little bit more. That because when you're playing with, like, it's easy for adults to fake things and to produce things and stuff like that, but it's sort of a little bit harder to get a 3 or 4 year old kid to play along in the act, to pretend something.
Well, they can pretend, but to have the facial expressions, and like a kid will pretend, but to get to with that much reality. But I want to address something. So Danny, Dell does believe in the paranormal, because he said, Dell, I'd love to take you to the Queen Mary or my restaurant, which will make a believer out of you. He believes in it.
Yeah.
It just, he likes to debunk it 6 ways to Sunday. And even then, you're not necessarily going to admit it's paranormal, right?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of things that, well, see, the thing is, so I worked in construction, I built houses, and I've lived in a lot of old places there, and there's a lot of things that can cause experiences, especially with old buildings with old wiring, that causes magnetic fields that, and some people are very susceptible to them. That gives them sort of feelings. There's a lot of things to consider first before the final judgment is there, that there's something more there.
I get into many discussions with Dell about these kind of things, because where I'm going to go with this, and Ian, I'm glad it is you. I'm glad you popped by. I haven't seen you in forever. He put that as a comment. So, for example, Dell started talking to people about the little people, because where we live in Thunder Bay, we're about 35, 40 minutes away from the Minnesota border. We're about 6 hours north of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we have a huge First Nations and Indigenous population here. We have a lot of land with a lot of history. We have Little Niagara Falls or Kakabeka Falls. We have the Sleeping Giant or the Legend of Nanabiju. One of these nights when we're just having an open show like this, I'll read you the legend. It's quite interesting. And the Sleeping Giant literally looks like a mountain with a giant laying down and sleeping. So we do have, that's where I was going with Michelle DeRoche. I lost my train of thought for a moment. She's been all over Canada. She has been on so many TV shows, Canada's Most Haunted, Paranormal Survivor. She's filmed all over the world, right? When we originally met her, when she came onto our network and told her we were from Thunder Bay, she goes, "Oh God, Thunder Bay, hothouse of activity." And it is. I have video. Now, Del, I think I showed you this, but I didn't ask his opinion because I didn't know if he'd believe me. He would have had a million answers for this. I had somebody contact me this summer from my city. Their kid is friends with my eldest kid. So they're grown-ups. Her daughter's a mother already herself. And she sends me this picture. And I had no idea what this was. I said, "Okay, nice to hear from you. Nice to see you. What the heck is this?" She goes, "This is a picture of my next door neighbor's fridge. They live in an apartment building, very, very old, built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, same side of the city where we are on, where we had the paranormal activity in the old home, north side of the city." She said he could smell a burning smell. And this guy's in his 70s, has no interest in the paranormal, has never even had a conversation really about it. And he smells something burning. He's looking all around his apartment. It's a one-bedroom apartment. He finally opens the fridge. His eggs were on fire. And they melted right into the eggs that were on fire. It was a whole dozen, just the ones that were on fire. I have the picture, melted right into the fridge. He threw them out the window. Okay. And then I found out from the woman who sent this to me, they've been having all kinds of crazy stuff going on in there. She had literally seen a lighter on her table, you know, that you light cigarettes or whatever with, lift off the table, move all over the place. Now, again, I didn't really share too much of this with Del because I know what Del would say. He didn't even tell me about what happened with him in the fridge till a couple days later. I saw the cut on his arm. He didn't tell me anything about it. I didn't witness it. And what did he have to do? Pull out his electricity meter to make sure there were no shorts and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's been lots. Well, there's a lot of old homes that are here that are in Thunder Bay, and
mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of investigations. I remember D. McCauley was telling me about the place that he was at, and
Yeah, Dee's really cool.
And he wouldn't reveal where it is because of the person that's involved with that, and doesn't want anybody going there because of
Mm-hmm.
the weird events that had happened there. And but a lot of old homes, a lot of old century homes. I think my aunt there lived in one of the old ones there down off of Court Street. That was the big,
Mm-hmm.
huge, had a hidden
Yeah.
staircases and
Mm-hmm.
weird stuff. It was a huge mansion. I think it was like 4 stories with these spires with special rooms up at the top of these little spires and really different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's I think there's some connectivity to stuff, and then you got to figure that around here, a lot of quartz and a lot of amethyst that's around here, and a lot of the old homes that were built
Mm-hmm.
back when it was Port Arthur, Fort William, incorporated a lot of these quartz and amethyst into the building of their homes, which they do. They're like a piezoelectric crystal, right? That they vibrate and they do pick up energy, and that whether
Mm-hmm.
they can store it or give it off. So you got to think it's just
Go ahead. I wanted to
just like a watch, right? Quartz watch, the little crystal that's in there makes the watch run, and you have these old homes that are over 100+ years old with this building material that's in them. So there can be some sort of semblance to truth to why something happens like that in
well,
those
plus
places.
quartz crystals with crystals. Say you're just getting into crystals. One of the best ones to start with is a quartz crystal because it can hold the vibrational energy of any kind of crystal. So you don't have to go out and buy 20,000 different types of crystals. You can just set the intention. So never mind, like you said, with batteries and what. Danny, I am so sorry. I actually said this to Del quickly and I didn't get a chance to tell you. We don't have people call into the show. I wish we could, but we don't because we're streaming live and it's on video and it's actually through a network in New Orleans. So we don't get people to call in. That's why we try and read your comments and involve you. I wish there was, because when we used to use Skype with the network, you could call in and we would have people call in. So there's no way other ways to do that, like except you'd have to send you the link to the show and then bring you on and then kick you off. And that takes up a lot, not kick you off, I don't mean it that way, but it takes a lot of time up, right? And we don't have anybody like working a phone line or whatever, because I produce my own show now, just like Del does. Before the owner of our network, he's in LA right now working with Writers of the Future for the next week, Joe Montaldo. He used to produce us too. He has many shows of his own as well. And so he could control all that, but we don't have anybody to do it. So that's why we try and read your comments and involve you. They're highlighted on the screen. For anybody watching on the replay, I'm glad Del reminds me not everybody's seeing this on video. So with the measurements and what have you. I'm going to read a couple other comments. Inner peace healing. I'm also a debunker. I pick things apart before I say it's paranormal. And there's a few people that think that way, because inner peace healing also says an even floor will give you the feeling of paranormal activity too. Funhouse mirror effect. It can. Now, I want to remind people, I'm not saying, I say actually we're kind of the perfect couple, because I don't believe everything I see. There's got to be something, and I feel into a lot of stuff. And like I say, just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And I always, those of you that know me and know me long enough, I talk about my proverbial back shelf, and it doesn't matter what it is. If I'm not sure about it or I need more information or whatever, I stick it back up on the proverbial back shelf, because I really do believe it'll either get debunked or truth will reveal itself. It eventually will. It always does. And I really believe that. So Dave, this is your part here. Dave's going to back you up 100%. Actually, we love Dave. We love you all. We're glad you're here tonight, guys. Thanks so much for, and feel free to share your experiences here, because we got one from Ian here. After this, Dave says, every investigation needs to be full spectrum analysis. Bring everything to the table. I agree, Del. There you go. You got a couple people backing you up. So it's not that I'm gullible. I want to make that clear. Del's trying not to smile from ear to ear. I can see that. It's just like I say, and I've heard so many weird things that people have shared with me, and they usually started off with, I'm not crazy. You're going to think I'm nuts. This is probably the craziest thing you've heard. And I usually say, try me. And I don't think yet somebody has told me something so strange that I don't believe it. Now, again, and that's what I like about Nuke's Top 5. That's not the only YouTube channel we watch. We watch many different kinds of things. I just like it because they're quick, they're concise. You can look them up yourself and you can do research on these things yourself. And some of these things are pretty compelling, but Nukes doesn't always show paranormal. Like, what about that chick we were watching just before we went live? And then I'm going to get to Ian's comment, where she was screaming at the top of her lungs. Somebody help me.
Yeah, well, that comes into a whole different area, dealing with people that like to abduct people, rob them, kill them, and stuff like that, where they'll set up an event where somebody will, they're just waiting for good Samaritans to sort of pop by and says, hey, are you okay? And then 5 guys jump out of a van and grab you and take you hostage, and you're gone, or they kill you, or they rob you, or take you somewhere. So that's the whole big thing about being aware of your surroundings and being aware of the environment that you're in. And like, I think with that one there is that he had just moved in to that area like 3 weeks beforehand, and so he's not familiar with the area, not knowing what's going on. But he did the right thing. He just walked into his house and went and closed the door, and then phoned the police later on.
Cops.
Yeah. Says when there's
but that wasn't paranormal.
No,
that wasn't paranormal.
Yeah. No, that's it, and that's the thing. When this is why I say about protecting yourself when you're going into places like this, is that when you're going into these abandoned houses or buildings or warehouses and that, you got to figure there is a huge population of people that are homeless that are out there living
Agreed.
around that don't want to be found or want to be seen and don't want you in their area that they're living in and stuff like that. So they might do things to scare you out of there or do whatever. So that's what's important about setting up areas that are there. You set up a protection zone around to trap anybody that might be in there that
True.
is actually a real person, but you have protection around there and you go after it. You have to be a ghost buster or something like that to go forward. You
Hmm.
don't turn around and run the opposite direction away. You have to go forward into it. And that's the way I think a lot of these things, a lot of these videos that I think are set up as staged things just to get views and likes. Like they're making like little mini movies in that. And that's what, especially like I said, when something is perfectly framed in the shot and everything happens in the center of the
Hmm.
camera, you're going, how is this happening like this? Like it seems a little bit too scripted or made up.
I will agree with you because actually I need to have her back on. But my friend Vanessa Hogle has filmed the first season was called Hidden Gems, and it was in Ireland. And her and Gwen Clapper, her best friend, and the producer, it was on Amazon. And they went to places that weren't well known in Ireland, and they did some investigation. They told the stories of the people that were there. Both of them are intuitive, but Vanessa's a really, really powerful medium. And, that was the point that she made when she was on my show. They just, I believe, just finished filming season 2, Hidden Gems in Scotland. But she said, this is ridiculous. Like, if it's sort of some of the things you said, though, Del, like you're going in as a paranormal investigator, you're not going to see us running around screaming and yelling and running and whatever. We're there to investigate. And, we're not there to put on a show, is what she has said. So I
Mm-hmm.
will tell you that. So if you
Yeah.
guys get a chance, check it out. It was an excellent series. I've seen most of it, and looking forward to season 2. Ian, I am going to get your comment. I just want to address Danny. You said you were totally cool. Wanted to be sure I was prepped in case you called in. I hear you. You said because you'd like to leave the restaurant, thought it would be better to chat here for the energy. You said you're over the shadows and noises, and you'd also mentioned earlier that when he called into my friend Lois's show, he owns a restaurant in Wyoming that's had near a native burial ground. There's a few things that were going on that we talked about. But what I wanted to say to you, Danny, is what I said on Lois's show, and this is for anybody with paranormal activity, is that, you have a whole army behind you. I always say, whether you want to believe in your guardian angels or, higher entities or whatever, you're not alone, first of all. Second of all, 2 of my videos, I'm not trying to push my channel, and Danny, I will send them to you after this show, that I try and empower people. It takes longer to explain than it does to do. And the reason why it takes longer to explain, one of them has actually a meditation that I take you through in the grounding and gritting. Can really help if people are experiencing depression, sadness, anxiety, any of those lower vibrational things, to help clear it, if you will. But I walk you through how to create it yourself. So I hate when I get something and there's 10 steps and I finish watching or reading something going, what was step 5 again? This way I walk you through how to create it yourself. And the first one is called a love shield, because we don't need to, you have to have respect, but we don't need to come from a place of fear. And we've certainly talked enough about what we've experienced. So no, we're not going to be disrespectful about it, but you can stand your ground. And the way you got to look at it is, would you do this if it was, Del, your camera's making a lot of noise there. The thing is, would you do this if it was a real person? No. So if you're not sure, there's people that can help you with these kind of things. But you can do your research. Del, your camera's making all kinds of noise there. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't think you can hear me, guys. Sorry about that. You forgot to mute it. So I'm going to send that. Sorry, your camera was making all kinds of noise there.
Yeah.
But
No, it's just
I'm going to
fixing the
send.
light.
Oh, okay, Danny. So I will send you, and anybody else that wants it, you can find it on my YouTube channel under Lorilei Potvin, the Angel Rock. It's called How to Do a Love Shield, and it's also, the other one is How to Do Grounding and Gritting. I have some, they're more closer to the bottom with my videos, but I teach you how to feel energy. Um, colors of energy. There's all kinds of things I teach people how to do in there. But those two are powerful because when you're experiencing activity like that, Danny, you can protect yourself. You can protect your place. We talked about this on the other show. I do believe your grandfather is there, and you can certainly ask for his help and protection too. Quickly, I wanted to read Ian's comment. Hopefully, you're still there, Ian, and being patient, hanging on. He said, we have had many burial sites of my ancestors and a lot of water with bad history around here as well. And he's talking about Thunder Bay. Now, Dell is Métis. I know Ian, I believe, is Métis, which is First Nations and another nationality. So, what's your experience, Dell? Because you've done a lot of work in the bush and places around Northern Ontario.
Yeah, well, I never got in contact with a cryptid or a Bigfoot or a little person, but I'd heard lots of. That's where actually when I was started my show, and then when we
Mm-hmm.
moved over here, is that when I started talking to other Native people, actually our neighbor, I was asking her about Bigfoot. I said, "Do you guys have any stories in from your reserve and that about dealing with like Sasquatch, Bigfoot, or whatever you want to call him, the hairy man, the Bushman, or whatever?" She goes, "Nope. This is the biggest stories that we have around are about the little people." And then when I was talking to Kitavitik up in Alaska, where he lives up there, and I've had him on my show. He's from the channel Xeno Hunters. Uh, the stories about there is about little people. That's the ones that are out there, and I guess you relate them to the fairies, the gnomes, the whatever the small people that come from like the Irish lore or the Celtic stuff. But over here they had them as well, and the mischief makers and that. And there's lots of different stories of them. Different, I guess you would say, breeds or tribes of them. Some of them are look demony like with claws, and other ones look like friendly Keebler elves, and some of them they all have different sort of roles and actions and what they do. And there's been a lot of I think it's Dave. I think it's up in he's around Nome, Alaska, and you can check out you can check out his Facebook there, Xeno Hunters, and I think his YouTube there. He tells you exactly where he is, and he's been going out and with his buddies and that, and inspecting different areas out through the tundra where they people had encountered stuff. And but that was the sort of the story that I found sort of interesting, was that the native tribes across the Cree and everything like that that go across Canada was about small little people, not the big hairy
Mm-hmm.
Sasquatch. They do talk about that one as well, but that was, yeah, I'm not sure why. Yeah, that could be gnome. I'm not sure how that came out there, Dave. but it was just sort of it was interesting that was the total opposite of what everybody's been talking about. Like all my life, I was always talking about this Bigfoot that's in the bush, and people being
Mm-hmm.
worried about that, right? And one thing I'll say
Was
about
that?
the
Oh, go
one
ahead.
thing I'll say about the Bigfoot footages that are out there with people that capture it, whether it's on drone or something like that. And I know there's a lot of fakers that are out there that do dress up in costumes and that. But anybody that says that that's a bear that's running across, I've seen bears, and I've seen bears on their hind legs, and I know how
Yeah.
fast a bear can move on its hind legs, which is basically almost as fast as a small child can hobble across a dirt road. It's not very fast. Their legs are short. The way their body is proportioned, they cannot take large strides across areas of bush. They run faster on all fours, and I've encountered bears in the bush. I
Mm-hmm.
almost had one.
Yeah.
I almost shot one right in the head when I was in up in northern Saskatchewan, and that thing booted up a 60-degree incline about 450 feet in about less than about 2 seconds. He was up and gone, and that's on four. If he was standing on his hind legs, I probably could have ran around the other side of him and shot him in the head again a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't move fast when they're standing up. That's for sure.
Well, I said I never thought I'd ever have a discussion with you about fairies. And we have. We've got a few comments here, and then we'll talk about it because one of the questions people always ask is, do we still have activity here? Not like we
Mm-hmm.
did in the previous home, but I can tell you there was when we moved into this place, we were putting something together. I forgot what we were doing, and the dog was a puppy.
and she had this blue floppy llama thing. This thing couldn't stand up if you tried. Dell's even shown it on some shows.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the corner of her eye, Dell says to me, "Did you just see," I said, "Ember's toy stand up and take a couple steps and flop over?" He goes, "Yeah." And it did. Floppy, like there was no way this thing could stand up. We saw it, both of us. So
Yeah.
go figure. So we've had a few things. We've had little things. Both of my sons have gifts. Danny, I don't know if you're still there. You were talking about kids with autism. Definitely, I believe they have, being so sensitive. So we've had a few little things. My eldest has gifts as well. He has told me that there's a black cat here. And I don't know, the more Dell and I talk about it, we think it's either that, it could be little people, which we're going to talk about. One sec. I just want to read these two comments. Zach says, "Never heard of the little people before tonight, minus leprechauns." Well, we just opened a whole new world up for you, Zach. You got to check that out. And then Inner Peace Healing says, "Isn't there an energy portal or UFO portal near Nome, Alaska?" And then we can talk a little bit more about this. Little people.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about energy portal or UFO portal. There probably could be. I know there's a well, whenever the military goes, there's usually there's a reason why they set up bases in certain places besides strategic locations. But there is a reason why they set them up around areas a lot near national parks where stuff is, and there's usually weird occurrences like that. But you're talking about the weird occurrences here. That's why we got this guy. Got Hey You here.
I made him.
Right.
Yeah.
But
we got to show him close so people that are watching can see him. Now, this isn't a doll. I made this from a sock, believe it or not. He's now a doll. He's a little rocker dude.
Yeah.
Okay, so Danny says, go ahead.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Hey You is he's like the sort of like the good sort of little small thing there,
little person.
But we've had like besides the little floppy toy that stood up and then fell over in the hallway. That was sort of weird because I was letting the dog outside because the dog wasn't inside and the cats were over there. And I'm turning around and I see this thing stand up and I was like, and you're sitting in the chair where you can look down the hallway and like.
No, we were in the hallway together. We were bent over.
I was standing up there looking down.
We always have a different account.
Okay, but anyways, it stood up and then
we both saw it. Yeah. We both saw it.
But there's been other things like just even recently as a week ago is sitting here where I'm sitting right now. The cats never come over to this side here of the area of the house. They're over there, and I could see both cats because the other one stays upstairs. And I'm just sitting here, and then something goes and grabs my sweatpants and pulls my sweatpants right over. And I thought it was the cat that had run by here. I'm like this, and I look over. There's the two cats there. The other one's upstairs. I'm going, what was that just ran? I was like, there's no mouse in here, or rat, or chipmunk, or squirrel, or anything in the house, because the cats would have went off if there was any sort of animal that was in here. And I was like, that was weird. And then there's been other times you could be sitting here and your shirt gets yanked up or pulled, and it's not by any animal or but anybody else. So there's been sort of little things, and that's why I always ask him. I says, I know, hey, well, you're still sitting there anyways, but he's the lookout, so. He doesn't say too much, but maybe one day he will.
He's Dell's co-host because I said, "What's his name?" And he said, "You." And I said, "You? That's what you called him?" He goes, "Yeah, like, hey, you." So that's what his name is. Zach says that doll is really cool. I need to get one that looks like me. Actually, I make gnomes. That was made from a sock. It was literally made from a sock. It's not from a doll that I decorated. I made the coat. I made the hat. I've been desperately looking for more sunglasses like the ones because they got little skull faces in them. I gave him long hair like Dell. He did have shorts, but Dell thought they looked dumb, and he's right, they did. So that's why he's got pants now. He's even got a little vest. So I do make things like that. Zach, I'll have to make one with a cigar, I guess, for you, right? But Danny says, did you guys know we have a mummified little person in Cody, Wyoming? I didn't know that. And then you said little people scare the living crap out of you. Did you know that, Dal?
Yep, I've researched this thing for about 2 years.
He has.
And I've heard so many stories, and there's so many accounts of these little people, and they're all across North. Well, they're all across the world, but stories of a lot of the ones
that video
that have been that people. You always want to talk about the negative ones there, but the ones that sort of terrorize people's homes or something like that. And there's a lot of stories, and there's scratches that have been there, and you got to wonder, says, okay, is this an animal, a raccoon that's causing these things or whatever? And it's not that it's a transformation thing, because that goes into a lot of native lore and that about people transforming into different animals back and forth. But I don't know. It's an interesting sort of spectrum of something that could be out there. So, and like even when you get into the realm of dealing with fairies, like when I was talking with our neighbor about this and talking with other native people, is that usually with if you upset these like the fairy folk or whatever, the ones that are certain areas, if you there's a way, if you bring them back to their house, they'll play tricks, or they disrupt you because you've disrupted them. And there's a way to satisfy them by giving them a meal or giving them some sort of offering and apologizing to them to get them to stay away. And there's other things that'll happen. There is so many stories about people being terrorized by these little things, uh, trampling around their house, banging on windows and that. And people will set up traps for them. They'll avoid traps, and they're not animals. Like, these are skilled hunter people that
They're
know how.
supposed to be what I've heard with fairy lore, and then I'm going to read Echo's comments. Thank you,
Yeah.
Echo. Is that my friend who has become Dell's friend, and we have her on at least 3 to 4 times a year. She's amazing, Varla Ventura. Now, she mostly does Celtic lore, and she's talked many times about fairies, pukas, brownies. She's written books on fairies, on mermaids, on werewolves, on the paranormal, the strange, vampires, you name it. She has written about it. So there is video, Danny, on Nuke's Top 5 of I think it's off of a reserve in Alberta in Canada, and it's dark, and these native people, you can tell by their accent that they're First Nations, and you see this little head peering around. It almost looks like a kid's teepee or something, and they turn the lights off, and you hear a
It was
little
like a
bit of
chicken
noise.
coop or something.
I don't know what it was, but they turn it on, and you see this little thing kind of keep peeking out. But when Varla was on, like Varla tells me this all the time. I just had her on a couple weeks ago, so did Dell. I always send her videos that she had no idea about. Now, there is this video you guys gotta check out. It's on YouTube, and it's from the UK. And it is a man and his kids it must be a friend's place or a new property or something. The kids are going, come on, Dad, I want to show you all this stuff. And then they're all in the backyard, they're looking at the play equipment and stuff, but it looks like a little forest glen behind. And they walk up to the forest glen, and the little boy goes, Dad, what is that? And he goes, what's what? He goes, that up there. And the guy pulls his camera up. I swear to God, I don't know. Dell and I've watched it a couple times. It looks pretty real to me. Varla thought so too. It literally looks like a fairy, but all brown. Like, it's like about this big, and it looks like a bug at first, and then it's up close. Like, it is freaky. Actually, Varla and I just talked about it on the
Yeah.
show 2 weeks ago. You've seen it yourself, right? Like, what did you
Yeah, it
think?
looked like a dragonfly with arms and legs
And a
at the
bit of a
beginning.
face.
At the beginning, yeah.
At the
At first,
beginning, yeah.
it looks like a dragonfly, and then as it moves, it's got arms and legs, and then you can see sort of a face. And that one's sort of interesting there. Whether or not that, because we watched that one video about that guy who used to be a movie magic guy that made the
Well,
little.
we found out because
Yeah.
he was famous for fairy videos from the UK. He's
Yeah.
got the whole character, the whole thing. And then there's a gentleman, he sounds like he's from somewhere in Scandinavia, and he's very kind about it, but he debunks videos. Like, he's not mean about it. He was really, really kind about this. And we found out that this guy who's claiming that he's filming all these fairies and stuff, and some of the ones you see, like, you go, oh, this is photoshopped. But in the beginning, before we had all this photo editing stuff, really, and it was from so far away, it was like, holy cow, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he is. That's what he does for a living, movie editing and photoshopping, when you find out. And that's how this guy discovered this and put it out there. But then he had said, but you know what? People enjoy the nature footage and everything he puts out there. So carry on. If you enjoy it, enjoy it. If not, just know it's not the real thing, right?
Right. Yeah. But yeah, it's just people think that we have all these satellites and cameras that are filming everything all the time, but you got to think about If I just even looking at Canada itself, about 95% of our population lives within about 150 miles of
Yeah.
the U.S. border, and the Canada is way bigger than the U.S. with the wilderness area, and there's so many spaces in between where people haven't been or been very rarely. Like when I was prospecting, I prospected all through northern Ontario, in Manitoba, up in Flin Flon, Manitoba, up in northern Saskatchewan. And there's a lot of places where people haven't been in 50, 60 years, a lot of bush that no one's been in. And it's a lot different from before when they used to prospect before. You had to go out and physically prospect claims. Now you just do it on a computer and you just pick your claim and you pay for it. It's a lot different now. But there's
They won't have the stories that you have.
yeah, but there's a lot of different things that are out there, and I like I said, I haven't encountered them myself. I've seen a lot of really crazy things out in the bush, that and I've had a
Even
lot of
at your
fun times.
camp.
Yeah, and that was a weird one there too as well. But just there's stuff out there, is that not to jump to conclusions. I guess that's the biggest thing there, and to rationally think about things. And then if you're going to go and inspect something, be prepared for everything. Use the Boy Scout model. Be prepared. Like have something that don't go run into you never go into a cave unless you had protection in case there's a bear or a cougar in there, right? You just don't go in there with, hey, I'm just going to walk in with my camera and there's a chunk of beef jerky in my pocket.
Well, you've taught me a lot of stuff, and then I'm going to read Echo's comment because it's a very sweet comment. Because when I first met, I've known Del my whole life. We're kind of like the second generation of our families. We're not related by marriage. We are related by marriage, not by blood. And so I've known him my whole life, but I've learned a lot from him, because when he first explained to me, just walking into a room, what he sees and what he notices, this is when we were just friends hanging out. I went, oh my God, it must be exhausting to be in your brain. And then I realized he's always thought that way, because he will still, I'm getting better at it, but he will see something and he'll go, did you notice blah, blah, blah? And I'll say, no. I'll say probably 99.9% of people wouldn't notice this, but Del does. Like, he notices things that are going on way over here when all the action's here, or way over there, because he sees all this stuff, and it's important stuff to see. So you got to train yourself to see it, though, right? Because most of us are taught just to pay attention to what's directly right in front of us. So it's an important skill, I believe. Now I want to read Echo's comment. She said, love the show, guys. I'm a friend and work for Danny at the restaurant. My autistic daughter turned me into a believer. And Echo, I shared with Danny just before the show, Del's stepson, my second son, I have two boys, has severe autism. He is just turned 24. He's a little sweetheart, but believe me, I think he sees a lot too, because there's been many a time he's asked, I don't know about you, Del, but he's asked me, we don't have ghosts in this house, do we? Because he was very aware, as was my eldest son, about what was going on in the previous home. So yes, because she said, my autistic daughter turned me into a believer. She talks to Danny's grandfather and pointing him out in a picture she's never seen. And that's pretty cool that she's able to do that. She said, I'm very glad he told me about your show tonight. And thank you for joining us. Like, sometimes Del and I do shows together on his show and my show, but a lot of times we have different guests too. And we cover a whole variety of subjects. Like, it may not, everybody likes to talk about the paranormal. That's why I said, why don't we do that tonight? And I'm glad that we did. One more comment. We've got just a few more minutes. Inner Peace Healing said, I was traumatized by a movie in the early 80s, Trilogy of Terror. So there's no way I could have Hey You in my house, but check out the videos of gnomes, because that was the other thing Varla had never seen. Some of these crazy videos. There's one of a gnome in a garden. It's so shaky. I'm not sure if it's real or not, but this gnome stands up. If it could stand up, it's not very big, and it kind of turns like this, and then it scampers off. I don't think it's Photoshop, but I don't know. That was one of the most convincing, creepy videos I've ever seen. What's your thought, Del?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And I just wanted to add one part there before we take off here, is that there has to be some sort of semblance of truth to these stories here, because
Yes.
On every single continent, ancient stories all talk about similar type of small little people or big people or similar
Absolutely.
things, and they were not connected by a telephone or internet. They weren't connected by anything. They'd have to travel uh, hundreds and hundreds of miles across the oceans there to all come up with similar stories from the past. And
I agree.
and they call them all different names, and they all do different things. And I think there is probably some sort of semblance of truth to all these things. There, we don't know. That's the whole thing about investigating and looking into the past and looking into these stories. And we've talked to Varla about this many times. Is that there has to be some sort of truth to it because nobody comes up with the same thing.
And I've been saying that too, for it to exist this many centuries of all this stuff that we hear about from the past that's supposed to be fairy tales, that it keeps getting passed down from generation to generation to generation. We're talking about mermaids, werewolves, we're talking about vampires. Now, I'm not saying it's the truth, but the semblance of it. Plus, as well, a lot of these stories exist in different cultures, in different lore. They may call them different things. There may be a semblance of difference between them, but the theme is the same, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So Dave says, I think we had a Lord of the Rings style planet before the present age. Oh, Dave, we could do a whole show on that. I'd love to talk about that. Wouldn't you, Del?
Yep.
Absolutely. I want to thank all of you for your great comments, for being here tonight, for participating in the show. Del, and thank Del for being here. Do you want to tell them where they can find you, Del?
Yep, Thursday nights at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, The Delicious Recipe. And we talk about this stuff as well. We talk about a whole bunch of different things. Like I said, we throw it all in the pot and we see how it tastes at the end.
That's right. Gives you food for thought. And I will be back here again next Monday, same time, same space. If you ever want to get a hold of me to book a reading or any healing sessions, I also do mentoring. You can get a hold of me on Facebook.com. I have two Facebook groups. One is Paranormal University for all things paranormal, many things we talked about tonight. And then I have the Angel Rocker Tribe for many of the spirituality type things that we talked about. I know Danny heard some of that tonight on Lois T. Martin's show. I've got your number. Also want to remind people, I always forget to tell them that the replays of any of my shows are on YouTube, but also say you're driving in the car and you want to listen to it, same as Dell shows, anywhere where talk radio or podcasts are carried. So I'm talking iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Spotify, SoundCloud, Podbean, you name it. I mean, I've looked up things that I haven't even been looking for, and something will come up from United Public Radio Network. So we hit almost all 200 countries. I think this show goes out to well over 500,000 people live every week. But replays, we need you guys to share the fun and the information. If you ever have any guest ideas or show suggestions, feel free to reach out, share them with me.
Yep.
And I want to go ahead. We can add something, Del?
Yeah, and says if you have any stories, thedeliciousstories@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm. And Del will keep your name and any identifying details anonymous should you so desire that, not want your story shared, so that you can be identified, right, Del?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you all so much for being here. We'll see you same time, same space next week. I send you all so much love and light, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. Have a good one. Thanks, Del, for being here, and everybody else.